Loyal listener Calvin got in touch after listening to a podcast published by The Guardian.
Well, not so loyal after all. I was listening to Today in Focus when I was startled by a statement. The average modern-day working mum spends more time with their child than a stay-at-home mum in the 50s.
Disloyalty aside, is the claim true? It seems to have come from a book called The Changing Rhythms of American Family Life, written by Professor Melissa Milkie, a sociologist at the University of Toronto, who joined me to explain all. Our listener is very struck by this claim that the average modern-day working mum spends more time with their child than a stay-at-home mum in the 50s. Is that claim correct?
It's partly correct. I listened to the claim, and I think the person said the average working mom currently spends about the same amount of time or more time in childcare and in the company of their children. And the thing is that those two are very different things. The way we measure how people spend time, we have quite different ways to assess their primary activity and then who is with them. And so it's a very important distinction. So that quote was only about half right.
Melissa's research is based on time use diaries, where participants fill out exactly what they did at what times during a day. Usually it's what they were doing yesterday, so the memory is still fresh. Researchers such as Melissa can then code this information into different primary activities, so they can compare the trends across time. To be classified as childcare,
that's when parents are reporting engaging in what we call primary childcare activities, those thought to promote kids' well-being and where the main focus is the child, say feeding young children, teaching them, playing with them, taking them to activities and so on.
Which is not the same as spending time with your child while you do something else.
We also then ask for each activity, what else were you doing, like a secondary activity? You might be doing the dishes and also talking to your child.
So childcare and time spent with a child are different things in this research. Childcare is also something you don't do much of when your kids get older. But let's cut to the chase. When she looked at these time diaries, what did Melissa find?
So in 1975, homemaker moms spent 10.7 hours per week on childcare. And that does compare almost exactly to the employed mom of the year 2000. At 10.6 hours of childcare per week. But when we look at the total time and presence of children, homemaker moms back in the 70s were spending 56 hours per week in the company of their children, compared to only 42 hours per week for the employed mom of the year 2000.
So a working mother 20 years ago spent the same amount of time doing childcare as a housewife in the 1970s. But stay-at-home mums in the 70s spent longer with their kids overall. They were just doing housework or watching telly or whatever and letting them get on with stuff by themselves. Fascinating in itself. But Melissa is being pretty gentle in calling the original claim half right. And wait, didn't we start off talking about the 1950s?
Our data starts in 1965. And I think the figures we used was 1975 because that's where we have that fuller who was with you in each activity, where we didn't have that we didn't have the sample size back in the 60s to look at that.
Before the 1970s, the data for working and non-working mums wasn't split out, so you can't pull out the specific trend we want for this claim. If you want to go back a bit further in time and use that 1965 data, then you have to amalgamate the working and non-working mums. And when you do that, the trend is pretty clear.
If we pull all mothers together, we see that back years ago in the 60s, we have data that says, mothers spend about 10 hours per week in this direct child care. Again, that's averaging across all mothers and across all ages of kids. And childcare is really activities that are more focused on younger children. And then if we look at the year 2000, it's about 13 hours. So that childcare has risen overall. And then today, and these are figures from the US, American Time Use Survey, our latest data point, it's about 15 hours.
That latest figure of 15 hours a week on childcare breaks down to 11.7 hours per week for working mums and 20.3 hours for stay-at-home mums. That is double the figure for stay-at-home mums in the 1970s. So kids are getting more care in general. Melissa says the reasons for this shift are complicated, but probably not surprising, from an increasing child-centeredness in society, perhaps combined with our being more risk-averse and with a greater concern about child safety.
This is why, it's thought that parents feel that they need to invest time and energy into their kids in this more uncertain world that we live in.
But again, it's not that we're spending more time with kids, just more time in specific childcare tasks. Tell me about fathers. How are they spending their time with children, taking care of children, compared to the mothers and compared to the fathers of days gone by?
So fathers really have increased their time significantly, and even more so proportionately to the moms. If we look at the ratio of married mothers to married fathers' time, and we often are just looking at married or partnered people in these kinds of comparisons because, dads who are not living with their kids are a different story. But over time, if we look at all, childcare activities, moms are doing, 4 times as much childcare, that more narrow category, as dads back in 1965. And today they're doing about only 1.8 times more than dads. So moms are still doing more, significantly more, but not even twice as much more than dads are doing. So dads have really changed quite significantly over this past 50 years or so.
Thanks to Professor Melissa Milkie. And that's all we have time for this week, but please keep your questions and comments coming in to moreorless@bbc.co.uk. And if you'd like to explore the hidden history behind the numbers, head to bbc.co.uk, search for More or Less, and then follow the links to the Open University. We'll be back next week. Until then, goodbye.